Have you ever realized that sometimes what confuses people and makes them lose control the most is not what you say, but the moment you become completely silent? In a world where everyone wants to prove they are right, wants to win, wants to respond quickly so they do not fall behind in an invisible battle, silence becomes the very thing that makes people uneasy. Humans can tolerate noise, but they struggle to endure the emptiness of silence, especially when it comes from someone they believe they understand well. We live in an age of explanations, endless debates, and excessive sharing, to the point where everyone believes that talking a lot is the same as being strong. Yet the truth is completely the opposite. Silence at the right time can make people question themselves hundreds of times. They begin to assume, they begin to worry, they begin to feel uncertain about their place in your life. And that is where your power appears. Because when you are silent, you do not give them information to gain the upper hand. They are forced to face their own thoughts instead of relying on your reactions to guide their emotions. This is also the core spirit of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we cannot control others, but we can always control how we respond. Silence is not avoidance or surrender. Silence is how you refuse to be pulled into the chaos created by others. Silence is how you protect your inner peace. Silence is a declaration that you are strong enough not to prove anything to anyone. In today's video, we will explore why silence holds so much power. We will go through each psychological layer that silence creates, which makes others feel confused, out of control, and forced to adjust their behavior. And in the end, you will understand why sometimes saying nothing is the strongest strategy you can use. If you are ready to turn silence into your strength, let us begin. The first thing that happens when you choose silence is that they are forced to fill that space with their own thoughts. Humans cannot tolerate ambiguity. When you do not explain, do not respond, and do not show emotion, their mind begins to work non-stop to find answers they cannot obtain. And it is in that process that the loss of control begins to appear. Normally, when you express your thoughts, they know where you stand, what you are thinking, and what you want. But when you are silent, they no longer have a map to follow your emotions. What scares them is not whether you are angry or sad, but the fact that they have no way of knowing what you are thinking. They fear that emptiness because in that emptiness, their insecurity begins to grow. They will start asking themselves countless questions. They wonder if you still care. They wonder how you are looking at them. They wonder whether you are quietly distancing yourself. And the less they know, the more they overthink. From a simple moment of silence, their mind can amplify it into dozens of different scenarios. You do nothing, yet they push themselves into anxiety. The interesting thing is that they cannot say it out loud. They do not admit that your silence has made them uneasy, but they can clearly feel that the sense of control has slipped out of their hands. And that is one of the reasons silence becomes such a powerful strategy. You do not attack, you do not react, yet simply by staying calm, you pull them into a conversation within their own mind. Silence does not only make them expose themselves. Silence creates an even stronger psychological effect. It makes them begin to doubt their own thoughts and actions. When you withdraw your reactions, you pull them out of their familiar comfort zone. They no longer know what you are thinking, how you are feeling, or whether you still care. And it is that emptiness that pushes their mind into instability. In relationships, people often rely on the other person's reactions to shape their own emotions. If you show anger, they know they have gone too far. If you explain, they know they still have a chance. If you argue back, they know you are still participating in the game. But when you are silent, they lose that guiding map. They do not know where they stand in your thoughts. And that uncertainty makes them start questioning themselves. They will ask themselves, what did I say wrong? Did I go too far? Why are they silent? What are they thinking about me? These questions have no answers, and it is the lack of answers that makes them even more anxious. They begin to review every word, every action, every attitude they expressed before. A comment they once thought was harmless now becomes something they doubt. An action they believed you would accept now becomes something they regret. Your silence acts like a mirror that reflects their own mind rather than yours. It takes away their sense of control and forces them to examine how they have behaved. Every minute you stay silent is a minute they must face the thoughts they do not want to confront. And the more they think, the less certain they become about themselves. They begin to question whether they were right or wrong. They begin to fear that they have lost you. They begin to feel insecure even in their own actions. This is the most subtle power of silence. You do nothing, yet you make them question everything about themselves. You do not blame them, yet they feel guilty on their own. You do not walk away, yet they fear losing you. Silence does not create distance. Silence creates awareness. And when they begin to doubt themselves, you have already taken back control without saying a single word. Once doubt settles into their mind, the next step almost always follows. They begin to lose control of their own emotions. And the interesting thing is that this chaos does not come from what you do, but from what you do not do. A message you do not reply to, a question you do not respond to, a look you do not return. These seemingly simple moments of non-reaction become the very things that create the greatest turmoil inside them. People always want to control the story. They want to know what is happening. They want to read other people's emotions so they can adjust their own behavior. But when you are silent, you take away all of that control. You leave them with no understanding of where you stand, what you are thinking, or what you will do next. And this sense of uncertainty is what throws them off balance the most. They begin to imagine countless different scenarios. In their mind, every possibility appears one after another. Are they angry with me? Are they about to leave? Have they stopped caring? Each scenario brings a new wave of emotions, pushing them into a state of growing insecurity. They feel that they can no longer predict you, no longer control the situation, and no longer influence your emotions the way they once did. And once they lose the ability to affect you, they begin to feel afraid. They try sending another message, then another question. Then they check your activity status. They reread old conversations. They become restless, uneasy, searching for any way to regain the control that has slipped out of their hands. Every action they take now is no longer based on logic, but on the fear of losing you. The ironic thing is that you have not done anything at all. You simply stay silent. But that silence makes them reflect on what they did wrong, where they crossed the line, and why everything is unfolding in a way they did not expect. They lose control not because you punish them, but because you force them to face the things they once ignored. Stoicism teaches that the one who controls their own reactions is always stronger than the one who loses control because of someone else's emotions. And in the moment when they lose direction while you remain calm, the balance of power shifts entirely to your side. One of the strongest things silence gives you is the ability to maintain your position in any relationship or conversation. When you do not react immediately, you do not let emotions lead you. And when you do not follow the emotions of others, you keep full control of the situation. Most people lose their position when they react too quickly. They try to explain, try to prove themselves, try to defend, try to show they are not wrong. The more they talk, the more they fall into a defensive position. But a silent person is different. They do not fall into that emotional spiral. They stay still, observe, and let the other person reveal everything before giving any response. And that slowness itself is already a sign of strength. When you remain silent, you show that you are not shaken. You are not pulled into someone else's chaos. You do not need to argue to prove your worth. The other person may raise their voice, may become angry, may try to push you into a weak position. But when you stay calm, they begin to feel that they are talking too much, overreacting, or making themselves look bad. From there, your position naturally rises without any effort on your part. In romantic relationships, silence at the right time helps you step away from meaningless arguments. You do not let heated words destroy your peace. You do not let others control the conversation through agitation. When you remain silent, they are forced to lower their voice. They are forced to think. They are forced to question whether what they just said was even worthy. In social relationships, silence reflects inner confidence. A person with real presence does not need to talk excessively. They only speak when it is truly necessary. And every word they speak carries weight because it comes at the right time, in the right place, with the right intention. Stoicism teaches that a truly strong person does not need to act strong. They only need to maintain calmness in every situation, And silence is the clearest expression of that calmness. When you hold your position through silence, you make others think twice before judging you, offending you, or underestimating you. There is something few people realize. The more you talk, the easier it is for others to dismiss you. The more you react, the more you show people that your emotions can be influenced. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to be pulled into meaningless debates, when you do not react according to other people's expectations, you send a very clear message. You are not easily shaken. And this forces them to respect you, whether they want to or not. When you stay silent in the face of provocation, you are not losing. You are proving that their words do not have the power to move you. When you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you show them that your value is not determined by heated remarks. When you stay silent in front of someone who only wants to win the argument, you show them that you are not interested in meaningless battles. This is a rare form of power, and also one that is very difficult to defeat. What makes them respect you is not the silence itself, it is the calmness within that silence. Anyone can be silent because they are speechless, because they are angry, or because they do not know what to say. But silence in a state of control, silence with clarity, silence because you choose it, that is the kind of strength that makes people cautious around you. And the interesting thing is this: your silence forces others to reconsider how they have treated you. They realize they have been too loud. They realize they have been disrespectful. They realize they can no longer influence you the way they once did. When they can no longer affect you, they must change their approach. Silence makes them adjust their tone, adjust their attitude, and adjust their behavior. In many situations, you do not need to speak up to demand respect. You only need to make it clear that you do not accept disrespect. And silence is one of the strongest ways to do that. Stoicism always reminds us that respect does not come from demanding it, but from the way you carry yourself. When you are silent, you do not only maintain your position, you also give yourself a gift that reactive people never have, the gift of observation. Silence pulls you out of the emotional spiral and places you in the position of someone looking from above, where everything becomes clearer. While others rush to speak, rush to react, and rush to prove themselves, you have the time to see what truly matters. In silence, you observe the way they speak. You observe how their voice changes when they lose their composure. You observe the unconscious pauses, the contradictions in their words, the expressions they cannot hide in time. You do not need to ask them anything. You only need to stay silent long enough and they will reveal everything themselves. This observation does not come from suspicion, but from clarity. Stoicism teaches that to understand people, you must understand their actions, not only their words. And silence is the tool that allows you to see the essence instead of the surface. Silence not only helps you observe others, it also helps you observe yourself. When you are no longer triggered by someone else's words, you begin to notice your true emotions. You see how angry you actually are, how hurt you truly feel, or perhaps that you do not care as much as you thought. You begin to distinguish which issues are worth addressing and which ones are merely noise in your life. This is a strength that reactive people will never possess. Silence allows you to reassess the situation from many angles. You have time to understand their motives, the context of the story, and the intention behind every word. And when you understand more clearly, you act more precisely. One timely sentence, one brief response, or one small action is enough to change the entire conversation. Instead of being swept away by temporary emotions, you respond with clarity. Instead of acting on instinct, you act with wisdom. That is the value that only silence can bring. And once you have seen through everything in stillness, you will never allow yourself to be dragged down to the level of chaos again. When the mysterious pull of your silence has made them pay more attention to you, this is when another effect begins to appear. They are forced to review their own behavior. This is a powerful psychological impact that few people notice, because when you say nothing, you do not give them any reason to justify themselves or deny their mistakes. They have no explanation from you to hold on to, no reaction from you to blame, no emotion from you to interpret. They are left with only one thing to face: themselves. Your silence becomes a very clear mirror. They begin to rethink the things they said. They rethink the moments when they acted indifferent. They rethink the times when they dismissed your feelings. The details they once considered insignificant now suddenly become pieces that make them uncomfortable. They cannot say you overreacted because you did not react. They cannot say you misunderstood because you said nothing. They cannot say you were trying to start a conflict because you withdrew from every conversation. And the more they cannot say any of that, the more they realize that the person with the problem is themselves. The funny thing is that most people speak boldly when they believe you will always listen, always explain, always try to keep the peace. But when you are silent, they have no foundation to continue relying on their old behavior. They begin to feel guilty. They begin to feel embarrassed. They begin to ask themselves whether they treated you fairly. And all of that happens simply because you chose not to speak. When your silence has forced them to look at their own behavior, another interesting thing begins to happen. They start to respect you in a way they never did before. Not because you pressured them, not because you demanded anything, but because your silence shows them that you are not someone who can be manipulated by emotion, and not someone who will be subdued by inconsistent behavior from others. In the past, they may have believed that you would respond emotionally. They may have thought that you would answer their coldness with excessive effort. They may have believed they could make you anxious just by being silent for a few hours. But when you completely return to your own calmness, they realize those tactics no longer work. You are not shaken. You are not triggered. You are not rushing to explain. You are not trying to fix anything. And it is that very calmness that makes them look at you differently for the first time. They begin to understand that you are someone with boundaries. You have principles. You have enough self-respect not to accept what is unworthy. And the respect they give you does not come from the fear of losing you. It comes from the realization that you do not live based on other people's emotions. You live according to your own values. Your silence is not an empty space. It is a message. And that message says very clearly that you are not someone to be taken lightly. You are not someone to be treated as a backup option. You are not someone who can be called on when needed and forgotten when the excitement is gone. They respect you more because you respect yourself. When you have been silent long enough, when they have gone through layers of emotions from confusion, doubt, and loss of control to finally respecting you more, one final thing happens. Your words suddenly become far more valuable. Human nature always treasures what is rare. When you speak too much, your words become ordinary. But when you only speak when it is truly necessary, every sentence you utter becomes something they pay attention to. Before, they might have dismissed your advice. They might have ignored you when you tried to explain or share your perspective. But when your silence lasts, they begin to understand that when you speak, it is not a rushed reaction. It is something you have thought through. It is something that truly matters, and that makes them listen in an entirely different way. The more silent you are, the more they wait for you to speak. The calmer you are, the more they value every word. They do not only listen to what you say, they listen to the quiet behind what you say. They realize that you do not need many words to show your strength, because your strength lies in your ability to control the moment you choose to speak. The interesting thing is that when you speak less, you also make fewer mistakes. You are not pulled into meaningless arguments. You are not driven by emotion. You only say what needs to be said at the right time, and that is exactly what makes you someone people respect. Silence is not only a strategy to confuse others. It is also a way to make your voice stronger, deeper, and more memorable. When you reach the end of the journey of silence, you realize something many people take a long time to learn. It is not your voice, but your stillness that reveals who you truly are. When you do not react in the way others expect, you become a mirror that reflects them. When you do not try to prove anything, you make them reconsider how they treat you. When you choose silence instead of arguing, you are choosing inner peace over external chaos. Stoicism always reminds us that real power does not lie in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. Silence helps you achieve that. It gives you space to think, to observe, and to choose the right moment to speak with clarity. And when you finally speak, people listen, not because you are loud, but because you showed them the value of your quiet before that. If this video resonates with you, leave a reminder for yourself by commenting, "Silence is my strength." Let that sentence become a message that you do not need to chase anyone. You do not need to fight for superiority, and you do not need noise to prove your worth. If you found today's lesson helpful, click like to share this value with others. And do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will not miss the next deep Stoic teachings. Thank you for spending your time here. Keep your calm, keep the strength of your silence, and walk forward with the self-mastery that few people ever achieve.